Okie dokie. So we will get things going. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar presentation, Release Quality Software Faster with End-to-End Test Automation, hosted by Dzone on behalf of Avo Automation. Before we get started, I have a few things to cover. If you have any questions for our presenters today, please put those into the questions panel and we will address them during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Likewise, if you're experiencing any technical difficulties, please drop those into the chat panel and our team will work to resolve the technical issues. And then last on the list is today's presentation is being recorded. And so it will be available shortly after the presentation for you to view the recording and share with others. So now that we're through the housekeeping items, I would like to start with our presenter introductions. Today we have the Avo team joining us to present this webinar. And first off, we have Annalisa Camarillo. She's the CMO at Avo, and she is a hands-on Silicon Valley marketing executive with over 20 years of experience succeeding in brand content and product marketing for high-growth software companies and startups. Hello, Annalisa.
Hello.
Next, we have Vidar Amin. He's the CEO of Avo. Vidar believes in building high-performing, self-motivated teams that deliver one goal, making automation simple, intelligent, and resilient. He holds a bachelor's degree in business management and finance from the University of Colorado Boulder, and when not working, he flies planes and goes scuba diving. Welcome, Vidar. And last but not least, we have Chris Horn. He is the head of product marketing and customer success at Avo. Chris brings over 25 years of product management and marketing experience aligning customer and market demands to drive sustained growth and enterprise value for software organizations. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
So to get started today, again, the title of our webinar is Releasing Quality Software Faster with End-to-End Test Automation. And so today the Avo team is going to walk us through how they helped a Fortune 500 bank reimagine their QA process to maximize the business results. For our agenda today, we will go to Annalisa and she's going to introduce Avo Automation to us. And then we will go to Vidar, who is going to introduce the subject matter for today. And then to Chris, who's going to give us a demonstration of customer pain points and how Avo solved those problems. And then we will wrap up with an offer and some interactive Q&A where attendees are invited to ask questions of our panelists. So from here, I would like to introduce and hand over to Annalisa, who is going to tell us about Avo Automation.
Thank you, Kellett. All right. Well, I'm excited to share how test automation can help our attendees. We have a great story to share today, and I can't wait to get into it. So let me go ahead and get started. But before I do, I also want to wish everyone strength and peace during these challenging times. I think we're about to turn a corner, but I'd be remiss in not wishing everybody the strength to continue sort of, getting through the pandemic. COVID has prompted the move to a more digitally embedded society. I think we're all experiencing that today, making the need for quality software even bigger, and that's the focus of our webinar today. I wanted to share a quick stat to give some context to that. The latest OverOps survey found that 50% of software engineers say they deal with a customer impact issue every month due to quality. So just imagine that. Customers are depending on companies to give them the best applications ever. And so quality is king when it comes to delivering software. To address this, we believe the answer is to automate software testing, thereby maintaining quality, accelerating software delivery, and allowing QA teams to spend more time sharing their ideas for software improvements and potentially new product ideas. So we have seen this too. Since those software engineers, those software testers are the people who become very close to the software, a lot of the ideas and even innovation is in their head. It's things that they should be able to share, and we believe they'll be able to share it through automation. So who is Avo? From day one, we've leveraged the IT and testing community to build our automation solutions, and you'll see this reflected in how our customers rate us on peer review sites like G2 and Gartner Peer Insights. And I encourage everybody to go take a look at our reviews on those sites. That said, we placed in the G2 top performer quadrant. We're pretty happy about that. This year in spring, we placed in that quadrant for test automation, and we're continuing to hone our solutions with customer feedback. Customer feedback is super important to us, and we work closely with customers to make sure that their needs and their input is reflected in the types of solutions that we bring to market. Avo has been working with some of the largest enterprise companies in the Fortune 500, and I'm talking about big companies like CNA Insurance, Voya Financial, and Bank of Oklahoma, and there's many other industries of customers that we do business with. Everything we've designed into our solution was compelled by a customer need, and we continue to add more capabilities to enable customer innovation. Just a couple more things to point out here. To make the automation experience seamless, we're the only company that has integrated process discovery with RPA and test automation. So if you're testing software and that's what you're using automation for, or you're building bots to automate an entire business process, or you simply want to auto-document a process, you could use any of our products easily, and they will all seamlessly work together. And we're one of the first to be certified for both SAP and Oracle, because we know that those are common environments and want to make sure that we are ready to be used in any type of application environment that our customers have. Now let me turn to our customers and what we've learned from them. This is the typical journey we see for a quality assurance team. You're going to find some of these points familiar. Not much is automated. If there is automation, it's often disjointed across a diverse set of testing tools, processes, and technologies. And to give you a little more context, a recent stat shows that when it comes to automation and those teams that are automating, only 16% of companies are able to implement end-to-end test automation for a full business process. So even when you do get into automation, it becomes a bit of a struggle, and those reasons are sort of all over the board. It could either be that the automation solution is not truly end-to-end, the automation solution is limited to certain types of applications, and so we have made sure to take that to heart so that when you're working with Avo, our solution works with any application, it works in any environment, and instead takes into consideration that it's easy to use, that it's going to get you up and running quickly, and that it's going to deliver on your expectations. So as these challenges amass, as you can imagine, quality and speed decline. When customers reach this point of low return, we help them rethink their quality engineering approach with automation. It's a perfect opportunity to kind of learn from the customer. What are they doing today? Where do they want to be tomorrow? And we've proven that a modern, agile, and agile is a key word here, delivery process requires intelligence, simplicity, and speed. Those are kind of the three tenets that our solutions are built on. Not to say that those are the only tenets, because we know that scale is important, we know supportability is important, and we've taken all of those things into consideration as well. But if you don't have intelligence, simplicity, and speed, it becomes really hard to achieve all of the other benefits that you're looking for from automation. So walking through these just very quickly, intelligence speaks to the inherent AI capability that enables faster defect tracking, things like auto scheduling, just to name a few. Simplicity means testers can test software without the hassle of coding. This is a code-free automation platform. And we believe the less coding you have to do, the faster you're going to get into market, and the easier and simpler the process is going to be. And the third is speed, which stands for speed of software delivery. And when we talk about software delivery, it's not just any quality of software, but it's top quality software. We believe rapid software delivery needs rapid test automation. And that's really what we put into our solutions and we talk to customers about. So how do we help you? As I mentioned, we do a little bit of everything. We make sure that we can cover a customer's automation needs holistically, and that equates to process discovery, so that's auto-documenting those big processes, any part of your business, because that's really where it starts. And often what we've learned is there's a lot of legacy processes that exist. And as we know, when employees leave or new employees come in, a lot of times it's hard to kind of track down where those processes have been documented. Well, if you're auto generating those documents and you can keep a record and you've automated that, it makes it a lot easier to keep a record of what your process actually is and what it involves. From there, it makes it so much easier to build a RPA to automate that end-to-end process, or even in the case of test automation, to be able to automate a QA process end-to-end. So there is some rocket science to our approach in that everything is integrated. So these core automation capabilities all work seamlessly together. And the reason is because they've been built on common design principles and a unified framework. But that is not the emphasis today. We're not going to focus necessarily on our traditional RPA area. We're going to focus on test automation. And it's important that we just talk a little bit about what we're going to show you today through our case study. So you're going to learn how we're simple to use. Our test automation platform is simple to use. As I mentioned, it's code-free. It's intelligent, so there's AI built into the platform, and it's application agnostic, so it doesn't matter what application you're talking about, which is critical for end-to-end automation. Is we know that there's multiple touch points in one process, and you want to be able to easily automate and have the testing happen across all of those touch points, and you're able to do that with Avo Assure. And then it's rapid and it's reliable software testing, which is also critical. So I'm excited for everyone to see that. See that example through the banking customer that we're going to talk through. But rest assured, we've covered every industry. So we've got manufacturing customers. We've also got insurance customers. So there's many that we can talk through. So that's a little bit about us. Now let's learn more about our attendees. Kellet, over to you for our polling question.
Thank you, Annalisa. Okay, so for attendees, we have a poll question. You're going to see the poll pop up. The question is, what is your biggest test automation pain point? And so the responses we're looking for you to select are from testing is manual, time-consuming, and or fraught with error. Your testing process is outdated. You're unable to automate end-to-end business process testing, or your test automation solution doesn't do everything you need. Or it could be all of the above. So these are some of the most common pain points Avo has seen, and so we're looking to see what kind of pain points you're experiencing. So please take time, respond to the poll. We're going to close the poll in about 30 seconds, and then we will look at the results. All right, so the biggest test automation pain point. It looks like most of our attendees are dealing with manual testing, and testing is just another thing that they have to do that takes up time, and it introduces errors. It looks like we also have people who are unable to automate end-to-end business testing or are experiencing all of the above. So an interesting kind of shakeout of where people are experiencing problems with test automation. So with that, what we're going to do now is I would like to hand it off to Vidar, who's going to introduce us to the case study.
Thank you,
so Vidar, take it away.
Thank you, Kellet. And thank you everyone for joining us this morning. We're excited to talk a little bit about our client and get into a product demo as well. So a little bit about the customer. Our customer is a Fortune 500 bank based out of the Midwest in the US. And they had a new CIO come in early last year, towards the end of 2019, early 2020, with the goal to move their technology delivery from a project-centric model into a product-centric model. Very simply put, they wanted to figure out how they could deliver software as quickly and as efficiently as some of their fintech competitors out in the market. And as they started to do this, they ran into a major bottleneck. while they were trying to deliver a product every 2 weeks in their sprint cycles, they started to face a big hurdle around making sure that that software was thoroughly tested in that short window. And that's when they reached out and were exploring various solutions and honed in on Evo to work with them across their testing needs for a couple of reasons. I think, like most of you may know, in large enterprise, they have a vast selection of technologies. It can be new age Windows web applications like a Salesforce, legacy applications which could be homegrown. In this case, because it's a bank, they had mainframe applications, and then obviously their core banking products, like in this case, they used a company called FIS. And what they were trying to do is, while they deliver the functionality in a very rapid pace, they wanted to make sure that their testing teams could build out the test automation in parallel with their development teams so that they could release high quality and thoroughly tested software within that 2-week sprint cycle. We're quite happy to see that overall, the business has gone from not just testing individual applications thoroughly, but actually testing end-to-end business processes, because the ability of Evo Assure to do heterogeneous testing across all these different technologies. I'm going to now hand it over to Chris, our head of customer success, to walk you through the client's pain points, along with give you a little demo on the Evo Assure platform. Chris, over to you.
Thank you, Vitor, very much. Let me make sure I'm sharing my right screen here. Apologies. All right, there we are. Hello, everyone. Again, thank you, Vitor and Lisa, and also Kellet for that lead-in information. I have to admit, and you'll see here shortly why I'm saying so, that the not only is it interesting what we experienced with a banking customer, but the polling results really align nicely with that. We see this quite often as a challenge or pain point with a number of our customers and certainly prospects on the lead in to looking for an overall solution, one that is not just heterogeneous across various application types, but also to apply an end-to-end business process approach. And usually, and I'm going to kind of give a bit of a highlight overview here of some of these key areas, typically their testing approach is fragmented, right? We find with customers, and I think that polling result really speaks to that, right? You can look at either side of kind of the equation. Either it was intended to be that way because that was the best that it could be envisioned, didn't know of other technologies that were out there, or sometimes you end up in that result or resulting situation. Hence, it's an ongoing pain point, maybe due to an acquisition, right? Or you're expanding your tests and now it crosses different application types. And I'll speak to that in a sense with the demo shortly. And these application technologies, the multiplicity effect, really start to add up along with, if you will, the challenges for creating tests, right? And in the end, or as a result, that leads to low productivity and the increasing of what would be timelines around releases and other achievements around expectation setting goals, okay? So let me give you something that's a little bit more on the specific side. So kind of the classic defect bell curve. And as you can see here, we're noting the agile development cycle typically. And this would be true even if it wasn't agile, frankly, if it was a waterfall type development approach. And what you'd see as you make or bring change to applications, right? You see defects increase. This could be by way of fixing existing functionality, or also adding new functionality. Defects occur. It's a natural event. It's unwelcome for sure, but the remedy is to test and remediate, right? Work through those defects one way or the other. But one of the big challenges is getting your QA test team involved from the get-go or very early on in that development cycle. And one of the classic examples of a development cycle that I can bring to bear here is an agile sprint-based cycle, where you have sprint planning, and then you've got a teaming event as part of this, and the QA and documentation and everybody else that's part of that team is participating in that. The developers sort of launch out and start their development activities within that sprint as the sprint kicks off. And often the QA team is left waiting a bit until some other milestones happen or well developed, namely UI or maybe that application and those functional changes materialize. And so with a really no or very limited test automation at play, so maybe you're coding, right? You're doing manual testing. That delay is very real. And the impact, frankly, it has is on the far right or the bottom far right. And that is you end up having two effects. One kind of begets the other. And that is your test coverage shrinks to that of what it needs to be relative to the pressure of the time frame, your release time frame and window, which is most unfortunate, okay, which leaves you exposed to certain defects, right? And also quality issues as a result. And so perhaps you extend the release, so you have a delay in order to provide that coverage. So this often ends up being, well, a pain point or an overall challenge on a release basis for most of these teams. And if you now enter in and apply test automation, and with our banking customer, of course, we've seen this with our other customers as well, with Avo Assure and using our test automation platform, things change dramatically. And of course, seeing is believing. And so in the demo, I'm going to show you literally how things changed for them and will change for you dramatically. But what you can see very clearly here with the bell curve is, okay, so our defect rate is the same. Let's just set that as a baseline. But the coverage expands dramatically or extensively, and we're able to more quickly begin test case creation as part of that coverage expansion. And the question here, of course, for all of you is, well, how? We have capabilities within our platform that allow that QA tester or test team, right, depending upon the size of that agile team or waterfall team for that matter, to be able to start building out in a no-code manner the necessary componentry around the fields, the elements, those things that would be used within the UI and outside of the UI without having the application released, and then marrying them up thereafter or associating them when there are other milestones that occur. The first preview of that application is released internally, and then the QA team can then jump on that and finish up their tests accordingly. So this greatly reduces, when you get the QA tester or testing team more quickly, more rapidly involved, this greatly reduces that front end effect, right? That delay, gets them working in parallel with that development team. And then as you can see on the far right, that bottom far right, not only did we expand our coverage, so now our quality is going to go up because our coverage has been improved throughout the project, but also we're now in a much better position to be able to release the product as expected based on the timeline, okay? So with that, let me give you a quick example here of the flow that I'm going to take us through for the demo, okay? Now, I've chosen to use an SAP environment, an ecosystem example and demonstration. And I'll tell you the reason why. I know for many of you, you may not be from an SAP, domain or have any sort of expertise in that area, but I decided to use this because of the degree of complexity that's involved in this ecosystem. You'll see at the end we support far more broadly application technologies than just SAP and even Oracle, as Lisa mentioned. But I wanted to, seeing is believing, I wanted to take you into this very challenging environment and show you how easily we can apply our test case and scenario design capabilities. And again, do so in a way that's common, regardless of what technology you would be in, okay? So with that, let's go ahead and jump into the demonstration. I'm gonna switch over to my video demo here. And again, as you can see, we're a walkthrough. We're going to, in terms of what we're gonna design here, we're gonna start with Fiori. Now, again, for those of you that aren't familiar with SAP, Fiori is their web interface that runs on top of, if you will, or as the web version, some might refer to, of that of what was traditional SAP S/4HANA, okay? So we're going to work in that environment first, so web technology, web-based environment, and we're also gonna start a sales order, okay? We're gonna start the creation process of a sales order still within Fiori. Then we're going to switch over to S/4HANA's native Windows desktop related UI. Okay, so we're changing it up. We're moving to another technology, and we're going to finish up the test case creation around that sales order create process that we started in Fiori, and then we're going to finish that up, that sales order process up from a test scenario standpoint in S/4HANA. Okay, so with that, let me go ahead and jump in. Okay, so one of the things we're going to do here first that you're going to see is we use intelligent capture against screens. So in this case, the application is available, all right? And what this tester is doing, this test design person is doing, is they're going to that screen, they're starting our intelligent capture, and they're merely selecting on those fields to which they want to include in the various test scenarios they had. What you just saw was a login, right? Now this is what you also just saw was a navigation. So we're capturing not just the fields, but also the navigation elements here. Because again, as our test moves, it's going to flow through the application just like a user would step through it. So we're doing, again, think about the end-to-end test side of things. We're actually capturing from a user perspective that business flow given the use case here, which is sales order creation. Okay, so we're capturing all the necessary elements by pointing and clicking. You're seeing the highlights to show that that object has been successfully captured. And as we move back into AvoAssure, you're also seeing those objects show up on screen within that test scenario. And I'll show you what that test plan looks like at the end. Okay. So also, as we're doing this, I want you to know that we're using Chrome as part of our capture process. We could use any number of browsers, IE, Safari, you name it. We support all the major browsers that are out there, okay, to perform this very same function that you're seeing here. There's no user experience change. Obviously, we apply upon basic capture and creation of the objects, we apply a system generated name, but you can go in and update the field names or object names as you see fit to tie them back to the actual screen, field, and object on the screen, okay? You can also reference over on the far right corner where it says screenshot. You can also take a look at what did that screen look like. So there are a number of different ways to stay connected with those screens that you're designing or performing your test design. We support dynamic pop-ups along the way, and so this is an example of one, okay, that's occurring. Obviously, objects, fields, drop-down list boxes, we support all of that within the point and click capture process. We also support tables, as you're seeing here. We're selecting tables that would be part of an item list, of course, as part of a sales order, very common within that workflow and use case. All right. And now we're going to start moving over to finish up the actual screen design, which is what we're working in right now. You're also noticing along the way, it's moving pretty quick. I'm doing that for time purposes, that we can append to any screen and list of objects. So why does that matter? Well, that means that you can augment, you can adjust and modify your test scenario and underlying test cases as your application changes, right? Fields are added, sometimes fields are removed from UI. You can adjust very easily your test case and the associated screens and objects just by clicking the append button and then going through that operation, that action. What you can see right now is we've moved over into the S/4HANA environment. So now this, as you probably see, it doesn't look very web-like because it's not. It's a desktop legacy-like application within S/4HANA, SAP S/4HANA. And again, I'm doing this to show you the diversity here of the different application technology types. Again, you're seeing with the screenshot opened up here, the experience is the same for the user, no matter what, whether they're in a web application or in a native desktop Java-like application as this is, okay? And very shortly here, we're going to be jumping over and we're going to start what we would call our test design step in the process. Okay, so here we are, we've arrived at that moment. So let me just summarize really quick, right? So we have a test plan that was created. I did not show that to you purposefully. I'm leaving that to the end because I wanted to jump into the to the hands-on stuff very quickly, get into how quickly we accelerate test case creation. And so we've started that first step. That first step is capturing those objects, well, identifying those screens and capturing those objects on the screen, pulling those in, renaming them as necessary. And now we're going to take these objects that have been captured and move into the test design process where we're assigning tasks, stepped related tasks against those objects using our keywords and our keyword capabilities. And this is the power of our no-code capability. So let's go ahead and jump into that, right? So again, same flow, login in Fiori all the way through to the creating of that sales order and into S/4HANA, such as I outlined before. So again, think about these as steps and actions. And so we need to fire off a browser, right? And the URL, right? Well, because Fiori is a web application, okay? As you'll see shortly with the S/4HANA legacy application, we're specifying the location of that executable to run that, right? So it's initiation. We can apply both clear text, right, and or encrypted text here, and you're seeing us use that for the password. So we have encryption built in, so you're not forced to provide unencrypted data at important points in time, okay? And again, we're designing the test case for not just for accessibility, but also to cover the navigation needs that we have here. And you can see under the keywords, as we're selecting an object and we select a keyword, we can associate that as we're building out and applying that functionality that keyword allows us and allows the test designer to perform at that given step. The inputs that you're noticing here, we're applying single data inputs as a feed as part of our test data. I realize that when you are running your tests in real world, you want to stream in perhaps a much larger data set. Okay. Obviously, I'm using single line input for simplicity purposes given time constraints. We do support pulling from a number of different sources, repositories, could be a spreadsheet or other test data management third-party applications and services. So we do support that as well. Okay. Also, as you can see over on the far left where it says debug on, which we haven't turned on, at any point in time here, as you're designing your test case, okay, you can choose to debug it on demand. And in order to do that, you would merely select that browser, right, to which you want to run this test against, right? So this is web-based still because we're in Fiori, so obviously browsers are applicable. When we get into S/4HANA and the native applications, you will see that debug on changes, right, to reflect the specific application type. That also tells you, or should signify to you, that we're application technology aware, right? We understand not just against the test case, but also how to enable our debug facility accordingly to make it seamless or easy for you to do on-demand debugging. The bottom line is that when you actually walk through this and do your debugging and fine-tune your test case for your given scenario, or could be scenarios, when you get to actually executing, you're assured that the execution will function for that scenario within that module, and you'll understand what modules mean here shortly when I get to the end. And now when you go to do your end-to-end tests, you're completely assured that your end-to-end tests are going to function, and now it's just up to us to appropriately string it together and execute that end-to-end test or those tests as you've asked us to do so. And I'll talk about that more towards the end here. Okay, so we're wrapping up our test design process. We're over in S/4HANA. As you can see up in the top left-hand corner, just to checkpoint what I said previously, that debug on now has changed to be SAP apps, right? It's S/4HANA in this particular point in time. So now, summary, we've captured our screens, or I might say identified the technology type, captured the screens and the necessary objects that we selected, and you saw that process. We've now pulled those objects in, right, appropriately into our test design process, associated those objects along with other executable steps or needed steps, actionable steps, with our keywords, that is pre-built bits of functionality, right, that we provide, as you saw on screen, okay? And we've done this for that entire flow that I mentioned or showed earlier. So I'm not able to execute this given the time constraints we have, okay? And I know I didn't show you the debug mode here in real time. Apologize for that, but we're anxious to show it to you in a trial or even a demo that hopefully you'll be interested in seeing. But let me give you an example of what that execution would look like when you do run it, okay? So let me go ahead and fire this off very quickly. Okay, so first example here, and I'm going to pause the demo just for a moment here. So here we are in execution mode, if you will. So what you see here are all of our scenarios that we've created, right? And these should look familiar to some extent, okay? Because I've showcased those at least in terms of the demo flow on the front end. You can see here that we've selected the ones that we would like to run. So each one of these is a scenario, and underneath each scenario, there's at least one test case that you saw me design, at least relative to the video demo. And so if you had multiple test cases, which certainly is applicable within a given scenario, that would work as well. But we are now able to execute these scenarios, right, end to end within a specific application type, right, or across applications. So from Fiori all the way through, given our flow, Fiori all the way through to that sales order in S/4HANA, okay? And that's what you're seeing here in terms of what's possible, right? So you check the boxes as to the sequence of scenarios you would like to execute. And how you would do that, as you just saw, you would pick your browser. Obviously, by default, we're going to choose the SAP apps execution because that's our main execution engine for SAP. All right. And then when it comes to how to execute, a couple different ways here. You can choose to execute locally, and you may choose to do that. But once you're in production, it's about scale and speed. Okay. And Lisa mentioned that in her opener, right? In terms of really making or providing improvements within your test automation approach, right? Really getting that great bump in terms of accelerating your test case creation. So when taking this into production in a test automation manner, you need to be able to distribute, orchestrate as well the test case or test cases and associated scenarios up into a distributed test platform for execution. We support parallel testing, right? And we also support distributed testing. And we do this by way of having n number of pre-built server pools. So these pools could be within your data center, right, of instances with VMs, or it could be out in the cloud for that matter. Tremendous power there. And you quite simply just pick the pool that you want, okay? And then you stipulate how you'd like it to execute, right? And then you would also choose when you want this to execute, right? I haven't shown this here at this point. And when it does execute, you get a report back, okay? And I'll show you what that report looks like in great detail, okay? So you can see what's passed and what's failed, right? You can also take a look at the detail here of this report, which is quite extensive at that step level. So again, that step level taking us back to that test design level that we talked about. So if any one of these steps fail, right, you can also click, you can do this with pass or fails, you can click what is a hyperlink here and it'll take you back to that screen to show you where that failure occurred more specifically. Okay, so now with that, just moving along quickly here for time purposes, I want to show you what the test plan looks like. Now, I purposefully left this to the end. Typically, when you're walking through your test automation planning, that sprint planning approach or at the front end of a waterfall project, your QA test team would look at the extent of what has changed, what's being developed, and they would create a test plan. And we do this graphically or very visually in an object-oriented way as well. And so I wanted to show this to you just the same, right, to give you a baseline here. And as you can see, we have different modules. This is that module bit that I was mentioning before. And modules can consist of anything. It could consist of a specific function within an application type. that maybe a group of users focuses on. It could be, it could be another application type, right, and of the like, and you can string together these modules to be executed and everything else that executes underneath, hence giving you that well, no code for sure, but that end-to-end capability depending upon how you design it, okay? And so very powerful, very simple to use, right? And you can also, when doing so, oh, I got ahead of myself really quick. Sorry about that. So when doing this, you're going to see here very quickly, we support the ability to actually assign the various tasks to certain individuals. Okay, so think of a task at this level as design and execute. Okay, and this is powerful because teams come in different sizes, and we've experienced this with our customers as well. And that is, you might have a QA manager who maybe breaks down this design, this test plan and design, and then assigns it to the various team members. Or you might have a team that is distributed, right? Multiple teams globally, in which case you're assigning tasks in the various QA work products, right, for test design across various teams to give you that end-to-end capability. You can do that within our mind map and test planning part of Avo Assure, and you can assign it to an individual and also assign a different reviewer. In this case, you can see I'm assigning it to the same reviewer, and you can set a start date and an end date as well. Okay. So as you just saw quickly, we're at the end of the demo, so hopefully you've enjoyed that. Let me go ahead and jump back to a quick summary, and then we'll get over to your questions because I'm really anxious to hear from you as well. So a quick summary of our Avo automation platform. I've shown you Fiori, which was web. I showed you S/4HANA, which is SAP. And you can see that at the top there. We support a number of different application types on top of this or beyond this, right? From other web applications, more standard HTML web applications, desktop applications, mobile, also Salesforce, both, I'll call it old design Salesforce and now the new Lightning version of Salesforce. So we have tremendous computer vision capabilities, and across very different or many different browser types as well. As I mentioned, we support a number of different browsers as well, all the major ones that you would see fit and need to use. We are no code, and even though I haven't talked about the number of keywords we have over 1,500 keywords, many keywords for you to choose from to apply those pre-built functions. That's what gives you or empowers you to have that no code ability. And one other thing to mention on this, you didn't feel like there was 1,500 keywords. That's because we're using an IntelliSense capability as well in our test design mode that ties back to the application type and the object type. So we're constantly filtering that list for that test designer to not flood them with what might be erroneous or other keywords that they would have to sift through that aren't applicable. So we're really trying to help and streamline that test design process, again, to accelerate it to fit within the design and development of projects and the pressure and how they typically run, okay? I mentioned the on-demand capabilities when it comes to debug, right? And I did talk about our smart scheduling. I left one thing out that I want to touch on. That pooling capability, that distributed testing, we do that smartly. And it's easy for me to say that. And how do we do that smartly? Aside from being able to distribute tests and put them in pools, we understand the allotment of what's being scheduled and to be tested. And so when comparing that to a pool, we can size up that time frame for execution to fit those time windows that are of criticality as needed by the test team. So if you're in an agile team or you're running on a sprint, you might end your days with changes, right, to your application, run your sequence of battery tests, get the results, so you're running those tests overnight. Again, that's a window, whatever that may be, such that when your team shows up the next day, they're looking at those reports and getting other dashboard information to show them how they did, and are there any critical defects that they need to start working on first, right? That's all part of the process and the movement forward, okay? We are friendly with other environments that represent or would be interconnected to test automation. So defect management systems and trackers, as well as application lifecycle management. We also support GitHub for version control, okay, and the like. And in fact, I'll point out, even if you happen to see something on the list here or if you don't happen to see something on the list beyond what's there, we do have an open API that's always that initial starting point for establishing a connection. We're always happy to add to the list, so we'd be interested to hear from you in terms of what else is needed in this regard. And so with that, I'd like to end again with a big thank you for your time, your patience through that. I hope you found that enjoyable. And I'd also like to extend a 14-day assisted trial for the test scenario of your choice. Maybe you can talk us into a couple scenarios, right? We're happy, very open-minded in that regard. And then also we'll have a reference card flyer that we'll be providing as well. So stay tuned for that just the same. And with that, I'd like to pass it over to Kellett to take us into what I believe is going to be some exciting Q&A. Kellett?
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for the demo. As a shop that does a lot of manual testing, that was pretty exciting to watch. Okay, so let's get to our Q&A section. We have some questions from at least one person who's attending, and but I thought I'd kick us off with a couple of questions that I brought, and then we can get into those that we have from the audience. So the first one is your product truly no code?
It's absolutely no code through and through. We do have a keyword function called @custom that allows you to do some things outside, but it's not required. I mean, it's there really as an outlier. Obviously, as you are maturing as a product, you always need to account for that need externally, like that ability to make a call externally from a test design standpoint, but through and through, it's no code.
Yeah, as far as I could tell from the demo, it looked pretty easy to use. How easily can you scale to handle end-to-end business process testing?
Well, quite easily. Obviously, with time limitations, I wasn't able to go into great detail, but as I was noting, we support what we call distributed testing and parallel testing pooling capability, where literally you can have n number of pools. So once those are deployed, our smart orchestration, that smart scheduling orchestrator, accounts for those and knows what's available, and you're picking from that list to deploy for execution purposes to fit that, as I noted, windows based on date time to run and execution time period. Awesome.
Well, another question I had was, can you handle dynamic objects?
Yes. So two things there. First of all, I mentioned our computer vision and obviously showed it with the demonstration I gave, where I was picking fields, right, and they were turning yellow. That technology, that computer vision on those algorithms that are at work are not position sensitive. We also, and I didn't point it out, so my apologies, but some of those dialogues that did pop up within Fiori are overlay dialogues, and they can be dynamic. And you'll also see this in other environments like Salesforce Lightning with that Lightning design. So bottom line is we're not position sensitive, and we do support dynamic objects that can move on the screen.
Awesome. I think this question I have overlaps with one from one of the attendees, so I'll actually move on and we'll come back to that one. How do you guys see Avo comparing to other tools on the market in terms of how much faster you can automate?
I would say very favorable, strong competitor. And in fact, ultimately, I would say easier to deploy, and our browser-based client-server architecture gives us the flexibility to really, that is the customer or prospect, to do what they would like to do. If you want to run this from AWS or Azure, not a problem, right? Not a problem as is. And of course, our connection is literally browser-based, and we're running that computer vision through that in terms of what we call our ICE engine or our intelligent capture engine. So it gives us great flexibility. So our deployability is faster, quicker. We are broader in terms of the application technology support than most out there. So I would say quite favorable. From an acceleration standpoint, you saw the quickness and acceleration capability in moving through that screen capture and test design, right? Of course, our no coding is powerful there as well. But when you also tie in our auto generation capability, whereby we can, as a precursor to this, didn't show that, didn't have time really to show that, but you can actually have your given user that perhaps is working in an application or maybe running the flow end to end, can actually capture that entire sequence, and we capture the workflow and we produce the test case underneath. So that enables the test designer to just pull that in and start executing and massaging that test case more quickly. So we have a number of different ways of rapidly accelerating.
Awesome. And I'm sure that's what a lot of the attendees are curious about, to how long it takes to get into the testing.
I would add, I mean, usually see about a 4 to 5x acceleration factor with most of our customers. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. That's super helpful. Okay, so apart from my questions, it looks like we do have a handful of questions from our attendees. So our first question is from Sanjay, and he actually has a couple, so we'll get through his first.
Excellent.
Can this be integrated with available Java and Selenium automation, or do you need to start from scratch?
Oh, that is a great question. I love that question because it's a classic situation where if you're in a manual testing situation, it's all new, but many aren't, right? They've started somewhere.
Yep.
So we can import Selenium scripts today, and it's something that I'll call it. We're in the phase of between not just the release we have now, but our next release that's coming up, being able to do that 100%. So I'll call it in a preview sense, but we can pull in many of those scripts today. All right. And we'll be able to really do that. I'll call it 100%, probably within the next 3 months. So.
Awesome. I hope that answers your question, Sanjay. His next question is this part of test-driven development? So I'm not really sure. Maybe you could clarify a little more, but.
Yeah, I will. So I'll assume that by test-driven development, I'll take it back to the agile and sprint planning comments I'd made before, right? So a team, right? The sprint team is working together and they have objectives, right? That's to provide some degree of enhancements. Maybe it's a defect release, right? So the mindset here would be that the team progresses and sees done, right? Which is often a common term used within a sprint, right? A sprint team. Doneness, if you will, could very well be quality based, right? So in which case you are driven, or your checkpoint for expectation is around quality, which has everything to do with testing, right? The results of testing. So I would say yes, in terms of applying that overlay and what I spoke of, not just through the beginning part of my presentation, but also how we would accelerate testing overall.
Awesome. Okay, and Sanjay has one more question for you, Chris. He asks, is OpenALM one of the tools you support?
Yes, we would use that open API that we have as well. Again, just to put a finer point on this, the ALMs and those that from an integration standpoint I had listed in my prior slide, we have pre-built integrations for those. This open API is that sort of basic connection. So you would start with that, and if there was a deeper connection or more fully detailed pull of data that was needed, we would then turn that into a pre-built connector accordingly.
Got it. Okay, so there's some flexibility there with the open API. Got it. So the next question I have is from AJ, and he asks, does it support API testing?
It does, and thanks for that. I didn't call that out in my platform summary slide, We do. And again, for those out there who might be thinking, wait a minute, you showed me a UI example. I did, right? For simplicity purposes. Obviously, typically API testing isn't tied to a UI specifically, it's behind it. Yes, we do support in a no-code manner API testing. And so we have the ability to set up a test case, okay, that you would design using those select keywords that are for API testing. Obviously, that was not part of my demonstration, but yes, we do support that. And using keywords, again, no code.
Awesome. Okay, so last question I have in the question panel right now is from Javine. And Javine asks, in the UI workflow, if an input is removed or added, and I think you showed this partly in the demo, but if it's removed or added, do you have to re-record the entire flow again?
No, you do not. So I want to say again, all these questions are wonderful, but this one as well is great because I want to make a correction here. We're not recording. Okay, so this is not, when we think about recording in the world of AI computer vision, recording was like that first generational step. And the problem with recording was that everything hinged from beginning to end on what was recorded. It's another way of looking at things being position sensitive. So if anything changed, you would be severing that recording in its continuum. Okay, we're not recording. We're identifying the screen type and that object intelligently. And so when you need to add objects, just think of the demo. You would go back to that screen. Well, you would click the append button and then turn the scrape on using that browser, and then select that field, just like you saw me select other fields, and then that object would appear in the list within the scraped objects, if you will, or captured objects. The same thing's true in reverse. If the field be removed or eliminated off a UI, right? You would literally just go into that screen, click on that object, and I didn't show this in the demo, but right above there's a small little toolbar, and once you select that, the delete option is unhidden, if you will, and you just click delete, it'll confirm that, and now that object's removed. So that's how we function and how either append or remove objects. True whether it's a logo you're using for a navigation pivot point or not. We handle objects at all the same levels in the same way.
Awesome. I think, Draveen, I hope that answers your question, and I think that certainly clarifies how things work for me. I don't see any more. Let's see. I don't see any more questions. Although Sanjay says thanks for all the clarifications to his questions and affirmation. So, Sanjay, thanks for your great questions too. So from there, I think we're right up on time. Awesome questions from attendees. I would like to thank everybody for coming to today's webinar. Next steps, I really encourage you to go to Ava's website and sign up for your free 14-day trial, or to go and request a demo from the Avo team. They're obviously super smart group of people, and they're going to be able to help you do whatever you want to do when it comes to testing. Or if you have questions, feel free to email the team here at info@avoautomation.com. I want to, so before we go, I just want to thank our presenters, Annalisa, Vitter, and Chris. Really appreciate you taking the time to walk us through your platform and a case study, and it was super informative, and to answer all of our questions. Really, really appreciate it from all of you.
Thank you, Kellett. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Be safe. Take care. Bye-bye now.
Thank you all. Bye.